Digging deep into the sands of time will confirm wonderful biblical truths. Are you ready to face the truth? Face the Truth Live is the monthly podcast from the Truth Church of Olathe, Kansas, with our pastor and Bible teacher, Bishop Gregory Riggin. Welcome to all who have joined us for this Face the Truth Live event. We have people attending this event in person in the fellowship hall of the Truth Church and people who are joining online. We thank you for your attendance at this live monthly event. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating world of archaeology in the Holy Land. Join us as we discuss uncovering ancient artifacts and shedding light on the mysteries of the past. Bishop Riggin and Brother Hilton are excited to prepare you for the journey they will be taking in the next few weeks. We are looking forward to hearing all about their trip in next month's Face the Truth Live event. But tonight, Bishop is going to prepare us to better understand what to expect from their upcoming trip to Israel. Now, Bishop, you have been talking about this trip for quite some time, and I know you are ready to share the exciting details of what is to come. Would you please take us through what you have prepared for us tonight?
Thank you, Brother Goff, and again, thank you to everyone who's joining us. Let me begin by saying how much I appreciate all of the kind words of encouragement, the compliments that we've received concerning this podcast. It truly does mean a lot to us to know that we have faithful listeners who are benefiting from our endeavors. Now, as for this particular episode, I need to offer a word of explanation to bring everyone up to speed. First, our loyal audience might realize that we did not publish an episode of Face the Truth Live in May or June. For that, I sincerely apologize. However, we had some technical difficulties with the May podcast that we fully intended to correct long before now. Unfortunately, our hectic schedules got in the way, and we simply never got around to it. We did record an episode, mind you, but the first 11 and a half minutes, for some reason, did not get recorded. Therefore, we've been needing to piece together this explanation to lead you to the moment when the recording actually began. And that is what we have just not found the time to do until now. Thus, what you are about to hear right now was actually supposed to be aired at the end of May. The June podcast was recorded the last Sunday night of June, but because it was a continuation of what we discussed in May, we did not want to release it until after the May podcast was uploaded. So, you can expect the June podcast to be aired before too much longer, and hopefully we'll be able to get back on schedule with a July podcast at the end of this month. Having said all of that, let me get back to the podcast we recorded in May. As I said, the first 11 and a half minutes had no audio. Because we don't have a recording, I can't adequately explain everything that was discussed during that time. What I can tell you is that the podcast was about archaeology, biblical archaeology to be exact. That episode offered us a chance to explain certain terminology and identify the process of archaeological work in order to prepare our listeners for the next episode. In that podcast, we discussed a recent archaeological dig in which Brother and Sister Jared Hilton, my wife, and I were about to participate and have since participated in. Rather than just come home and talk about our experience, we wanted to prepare our audience beforehand so that they could better understand what was involved. Again, I do not know what was said during the 11 and a half minutes of dead air. All I know is when the audio began working, we were listening to a recording of Dr. Scott Stripling, the head of the archaeological dig at ancient Shiloh in Israel, the dig in which our group participated. We will pick up at that point as Dr. Stripling explains the meticulous methods he uses during this process.
what we are going to excavate, we know exactly where it lies within the square, and we can measure from there. We establish benchmarks at each square. So we know that we are 700 meters above sea level, and that's marked very clearly on that square. All measurements then are taken off of that benchmark, so we know where in the square it was found. And we then, in our dig at Shiloh, I use a color system. So each square has its own color. We've got the orange team, the red team, the blue team, the purple team, and so forth. And after they have excavated and after they have dry sifted that material to check to make sure nothing was missed, then it's dumped into these colored mesh bags that are taken down to our wet sifting station. And that wet sifting station is state of the art. And so this has never been done in the field the way that we're doing it, where 100% of the material is washed. And it slows you down a little bit, but we're fortunate to have a big team and people that are able to do this type of work. And again, I don't get a second shot at it, so I don't want to miss anything.
Right.
Now, what we're finding in wet sifting, Tim, is revolutionary. We are finding that in the past, archaeologists were discarding about 75% of the evidence. It was in their dump piles. And we know because we've gone back to old dump piles and wet sifted them, and we found more scarabs, bulla, seal impressions, beads, coins, etc., than they did. It's all in their dump. So if somebody excavates a site and says, well, we didn't find evidence that matches the Bible, well, maybe not when we're throwing away 75% of the evidence.
Yeah.
And so this is just critically important. And so we're trying, I've now written my first articles on this, and I'm making, presentations at conferences and trying to empower others with this same technology that we have brought to bear in the field.
It's like panning for gold in a sense, where you're trying to get all the stuff that doesn't belong there. And you're looking for the gems, as it were. When I've watched certain sites, because some sites are at a place where there's no water. I mean, they're very, very difficult. As an example, do you have a well where you're getting your water from?
The ancient spring, Ein Sailun, it's about 1 kilometer from the Tell, and that's where they got their water in antiquity, was from the spring. So, of course, we've got pipes that bring it up to us now. In antiquity, they had to carry it up every day. But yeah, it comes from Ein Sailun, the Shiloh spring. Sites that don't have water, and I've excavated a site like that, so I know that it's difficult, but I feel so strongly about it now that if I had it to do all over again at Khirbet El Maqater, I would have brought in water trucks. And of course, money solves a lot of your problems. So
Yeah.
With money, we could bring in every day a water truck, and we would have washed, because it's just that critically important. And Tim, as an evangelical, if I make a mistake, then it's kind of like, it's because I'm an evangelical. But if someone else makes a mistake, we all make mistakes. It's one of those things. So this has forced us to be excellent, and I think that's a good thing.
I think that's the reason why you have such a great reputation, because you have really worked with your protocols. And one of the things I heard about is how you deal with, let's talk a little bit about the conservation and restoration of a site. Because what we know is that, I don't know if anyone knows this, but when you dig a site, it's going to only happen one time, right? I mean, once you destroy a layer, it's gone. And so that's why it's been so interesting to see the technology that you've used with your drone photography. I think you're using some type of infrared photography. You're doing everything to document, because once again, if you dig it, it's no one else in the world will ever have a chance to have dug that. Your record, so what you're doing is you're just identifying everything that you find, right? And then later on, you can come back and interpret what you believe these finds are telling you.
It's true, we can't reconstruct everything, but since I saved soil samples from every locus, you literally could, 50 years from now, go back and get my soil samples that we have saved and do new scientific testing on the soil and do later analysis. So we're trying to cover all of our bases as much as we can. The conservation is, in my view, critically important, because it's not just about us, it's about how the story is told. And that's what Jeremiah 7:12 says to me: go now to Shiloh, see what I did there, where I first caused my name to dwell. And so we want to tell that story well, and we want future generations to be able to come and to visit Shiloh. those walls will fall apart if they're not conserved. And so we invest a lot of money and time and expertise, because I have two of the world's best conservationists that have trained our team, and that would be Lane Rittmeyer and Orna Cohen. And so we have come up with a system that, I mean, the Antiquities Authority, they're coming and learning from what we're doing, because let's say we take a wall, we clean all the soil out of it that we can with trowels and brushes. Then we bring in a power hose and we power wash that ancient wall. Then we let it dry overnight, and then we have massive, I guess you describe them as a caulk gun that we invented this. So, well, it is a massive caulk gun, but what we did is we got our restoration mortar, which is a mixture of local soil and sand and some bonding materials. I don't want to give out the secret sauce, but anyway, we've got our recipe, and we shoot it deep into the wall, into the crevices, and that's what enables it to bond then. And then we brush it, and we've got a wire brush, so it's almost undetectable, but those walls will be there for many generations.
Other, let's say, archaeologists probably wouldn't have done necessarily that, and then they'll just sort of fall apart because of erosion and things like that.
Right, and it's so sad, because this is evidence of God's work in history, and so we want to take care of it. And I think people want to fund those types of things. They want to know that their money is going to something that's meaningful like that. And we're really, really grateful for that support. And you mentioned infrared and ultraviolet lighting. We have a lab in field where we literally examine our objects and our pottery. I mean, we get like 2,000 pieces of pottery a day and countless objects. And so as we examine them, before anything is moved from the good pile to the bad pile, so to speak, we want to see it under different type of lighting, because ancient writing may have been undetectable now to the naked eye. So we just add in another layer any chance we can to make sure we're not missing anything.
Yeah, let's talk just a little bit about that technology, because I know you've got like a dark room atmosphere, and you're using the, special light, and you're doing certain things to examine it. It's really, I mean, it's a great scientific approach to it. So explain a little bit about that.
Well, it's really interesting, because archaeology is very low tech in one sense. I mean, it still takes human beings doing, meticulous grunt work. But at the same time, we have our laptops in the field where we're entering data. I'm crunching numbers and making data-driven decisions. And we've got infrared and ultraviolet lighting going on, and flotation going on in another area. And then there's wet sifting and saving samples, to go to the lab. So it's very high tech in another sense.
All right, so I hope that you caught all that. It was a lot of information. That's the longest video that we've got. But just several things that he talked about, how meticulous they have to be in doing all of this. Because you understand, when you start unearthing something that's been buried for thousands of years, one thing, once it's exposed, it could easily fall apart from that point. And so one thing Dr. Stripling is doing, and this really, it's caused him to be highly, highly respected in Israel. They have certain authorities that grant permission or deny permission for these archaeological digs. But they respect Dr. Stripling because he is so careful about everything. And he is so meticulous. I know I'm using that word a lot, but I don't know of a better word to describe it, that he cares about every minute detail of what's going on. So I don't know if you caught everything that he said in all of that, how that once they uncover this wall, that they then go in and power wash it, and then they've got a special substance that they shoot back in with like a huge caulk gun to hold it in place, because now that you've removed all the debris and you've taken away everything, those walls would collapse, and then somebody else wants to come along in time. And in fact, that has happened. When we go to Israel in 2024 and we go to Jericho, you're going to see that a lot of Jericho, from the time that they uncovered it, is now collapsing, and even some of it is gone. Because it was not conserved like this. So Dr. Stripling is making sure that even when he's finished with the site, people will be able to come back for generations and still observe it as it was found. But the whole process of dividing it into into squares, measuring height, keeping soil samples. People just don't realize how much goes into it. You think, okay, well, he gets a shovel and he digs up and he finds a bone. All right, wonderful. But it's just not like that. And there is so much work. And then this wet sifting that Dr. Stripling talked about, he is really a leader in this. Most sites do not do this. Very, very few sites do this. Some of them because they don't have water at the site, as he discussed, but they have been working on developing a portable water sifting, wet sifting machine that they can carry with them into these other sites. But if you caught this, he said 75% of the evidence is thrown away. They don't recognize that it's evidence.
Unreal.
And so this is one thing archaeologists do when they start digging. Once they've gone through whatever they want, then they form a dump pile. And the dump pile is just all the refuse. Okay, this is nothing but dirt and clods and rocks, and there's nothing here. And this is just the dump for the stuff that we know has no value. What Dr. Stripling has done, in fact, we're going to see in a few minutes one of the greatest finds, perhaps of all time, with regard to the Bible. Literally, it's that important. Dr. Stripling found it because he went back to someone else's dump pile and wet sifted.
Wow.
And it had been discarded, somebody thinking it was just a rock or whatever, and threw it away. They had no clue. But he got permission to go back through that dump pile. And he said he found 2 to 3 times in the little bit of work that he did in that dump pile what the other archaeologists had done in total.
Wow.
As far as the evidence and the things that he uncovered. So that's one of the exciting things to me, is that we are going to get to work with a man who's a leader in this and highly, highly respected. And I don't know if you caught what he said. You know, he said because he's an evangelical, what he's saying is those that are secular in nature, they question anybody that makes any claims about proving the Bible. That it's just a question mark on them from the beginning. And so Dr. Stripling says, if I make one mistake, if I claim that I found something and it's not that, or if I destroy something, yep, that's those evangelicals for you.
Right.
Where somebody else could go in and do it. If they don't believe the Bible, they just say, well, everybody makes mistakes, and just write it off. But he said what that's done, rather than him becoming bitter about it or whatever, he said it's driven him to become excellent, so that there is far less chance for mistake. And he's extremely cautious and conscientious in what he does. So again, this is such a great opportunity for us to be able to work with a man of this caliber and someone that's highly respected. In fact, the dig we're going on, he was contacted by the authorities in Israel. He didn't ask for it. They asked him.
Really? Wow.
Because of their respect for him and the work that he does.
What will be your role? If we could pause for a second, we just saw a lot of details. What will be your role in this effort?
Well, we don't know until we get there exactly what he's going to have us doing. But we will very likely either be digging or cleaning or wet sifting or dry sifting. I mean, we're going to be involved hands-on in some way.
So your hands will touch something possibly for the first time since it was covered.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes. And we're talking about going back, what they're excavating right now and where we're going. We're talking about 1400 BC.
Wow.
1400 years before Christ. And we're going to be in the process of unearthing things. And as you said, very possibly our hands be the first hands to touch these items in 1,400 years.
And it's not just that they're old; it's just that they are in Scripture. They're biblical times.
It's biblical, and that's
yeah.
So yes, so it gets exciting. So this is that gives you a little bit of a background of what's involved, of how much work it is. And now we will start our day. We have to be on the bus. Brother Hilton, is it 4:30?
I know we have to be on site at
6.
At 6.
We will be digging.
I think it's an hour
We'll
drive.
have all of our equipment unloaded, everything. We will start digging at 6 a.m. But we're staying, I think, about 45 minutes from the site.
Oh, my word.
And so I think we have to be on the bus at 4:30 in the morning every day. And then we start digging at 6 a.m.
You're going to have to get up early to eat your hummus and get on that bus.
Brother Josh is trying to break us in early.
Yes. Well, we have Mediterranean food with the Israel discussion.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be humming. Just pass me on by. I'll grab a protein
That's
bar
right.
on the bus.
Peanut butter crackers.
So anyhow, but that gives you an idea of
My.
how much is involved in this process, and it's amazing. Now again, that's the longest video, so don't think this is what this night's all going to be about. But anyhow, let's move on. If we can get the slides back up there. All right, that you saw that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some terms, and hopefully I can see these from where I'm sitting. Just some things. No, I can't read that. That's way too small for me. Let me see if I can pull it up here. No, it's not letting me do this. Try to get it. That's just too small. I can't read it. I should have brought my laptop, but I didn't. Let me see if I can just pull it up on my phone so I can at least read it to you. Okay.
If somebody's write it in the chat. Just go ahead and drop it in the chat. We can
Okay.
circle it that way.
All right, so here's what it says. The first one says locust. Now, this is just some terms. I don't know if you heard Dr. Stripling use that term about the locusts. He's not saying locust as in the bug. It's a specific term, and it means a specific section or location within the archaeological dig site. It is a discrete excavated unit or archaeological context. And so what I've got here, and the picture's a little small, but a locust, what they do when they get there, the entire site, they will divide it into loci, which is the plural. And they divide it into each of these sections. And the reason for that, they'll all be numbered on a grid. He talked about the grid, so you'll have, grid A, 2, or whatever. So they know that that's where this piece was found. And they'll know the elevation, and they know, but the locust is, not locust, I keep putting a T on the end. The locus is the specific square. So there will be an individual or a few individuals in each locus.
Okay.
Working there. All right. So that's one of the terms that I thought. And I think that in one of these presentations, they're going to use this word bula. A bula is an inscribed clay or soft metal, such as lead or tin, or bitumen or wax token, used in commercial and legal documentation as a form of authentication and for tamper-proofing whatever it's attached to. So it's kind of a round seal, but used for official purposes. I'm sorry, I thought I had the picture up. So there's a picture of a bula. All right. Here's a term that is very important to archaeologists. Doesn't mean a lot to most of us, but it's extremely important to archaeologists. It is the phrase in situ. In situ. Now, think about, just like with locusts, think of location. That's where we get our word location, from the Latin word, locus. So location. So in this in situ, think about in situation, where something is situated. In situ is a Latin phrase that means on site or in position. It's used to mean in its original location. So we're talking about, we're going to be digging through here, and all of a sudden we find a piece of pottery. All right, if we are digging and this pottery is in this dirt in which we're digging, then that pottery is found in situ. When they find it in a dump pile, or that somebody has picked it up off the ground and taken it and sold it on the antiquities market or whatever, that's not in situ. The important thing about in situ is it becomes much more valuable to archaeologists if they know exactly where this was found. As I said, what they're going to do, they're going to take these walls and they're going to cut straight down in this mound. And we're going to talk about the mound in just a minute. It's another one of the terms that's on this page. But they'll go into a mound and they cut straight down. And if you can think of a layer cake, some of you got some of the wedding cake, you think about the layers. Well, that's the way these mounds are. There are layers, and each layer is a time period. Because what they did in antiquity, they didn't come in and level a city. They just built on top of it.
Okay.
And, if a city was destroyed over time, weeds, grass, whatever grew up, well, they would just come in and they just cover it over and build on top. And so you can dig down through the layers. So this is why in situ makes a difference, because depending on what layer it's in, that can tell us about the time period and help us to date when this was in use, which is extremely important because of some other things that we're going to talk about and see. In fact, the very next one, back to the slide presentation, the very next one, this is something that is very, very valuable to archaeologists in the Holy Land especially. And that's a picture of that's in North America, but that's an arrowhead that's found in situ. Okay, so they just find it on location. This is not something, you can go down to the pawn shop and find arrowheads or whatever. But if you're actually digging and you find this arrowhead buried in the sand here, that's different. Okay, so, but then this next one this is a scarab. And a scarab is a beetle-shaped amulet. It had impression seals. They were widely popular throughout ancient Egypt. And here's the thing is throughout the Holy Land and the surrounding areas, people would have these because of trips to Egypt or Egyptians coming through. And every pharaoh that ruled in Egypt had his own scarab. So each scarab was designed in a special way to commemorate that pharaoh. So you can kind of get an idea why if they're digging and they find a scarab in situ, that scarab relates to a particular pharaoh. And the Egyptians were meticulous about their calendar and their dates. And so you can put a date to that scarab. And then that identifies whatever else you're looking at in that layer. You know that it took place during the time when this pharaoh was either on the throne or recently had been on the throne. You understand?
Right.
So these scarabs, very, very important when they can find those. And this has been one of the biggest things. In fact, one archaeologist was just flatly denying, and I don't remember now which site it was. I think it's Jericho. I believe it was Jericho. An archaeologist was denying that the destruction of Jericho had anything to do with Joshua and the biblical story. The amazing thing was they found 3 scarabs there in that destruction layer that were all the pharaohs of that time period. And so these archaeologists said, well, no, that's not what, these are commemorative. Somebody came along and made up one to look like those that were back there.
Special editions.
Special editions. The problem is there is no evidence anywhere in the world of there ever being commemorative scarabs.
Okay.
The second is one of the scarabs was a female pharaoh. There were only 2 of those in history, if you consider Cleopatra to be a female pharaoh. So there were only 2 in history, and the other one was a woman that was hated. She became pharaoh through insurrection, The people despised her. They hated her. In fact, when they finally got her off the throne, they erased her from everything. They went into their walls where they tell the stories of Egypt and scratched her off of
My
there.
word.
So why would they create a commemorative
Right.
scarab for this woman? And it makes no sense. But those who don't want to believe the Bible, they will go to any length to keep from accepting biblical records. But these scarabs, very important. Finding scarabs, extremely important in Holy Land sites to help date this particular layer and let us know that's when this took place. All right? So I've got another page here of terms that we want to talk about. The next term is one that you'll hear a lot, and that is a tell. And sometimes that's spelled T-E-L, sometimes it's T-E-L-L. But tell is really, it's really an Aramaic word or Arabic word, I forget now which, but it's been brought into the English language. But it's an archaeological mound that contains the remains of an ancient city and settlement from the biblical period. So these mounds were formed over time, as I mentioned, as new layers of civilization would come in and build over them. This is Tel Shiva. Tel Shiva in Israel. And I know the picture's small, you can't really see it that well, but they just look like hills. If you're just driving out through Israel, it looks like they're just this mound out in the middle of nowhere. Most of the time, those mounds are actually tells. And so you'll see, in fact, when we go on our trip, some of the places they give it the name Tel Dan.
Oh, like Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's what all of this is. That's where this comes from. That this was some city that they've uncovered in this mound.
Okay.
Okay? So you're going to see this over and over and over in Israel, this whole idea of a tell. And this is where I was talking about the mounds, where they cut down through the side and they determine the layers, how many layers there are, if there's a destruction layer here, and by that I mean that somebody came in and overthrew it, or if there was an earthquake, or there was a fire, or whatever, some way that the city was destroyed at this particular level. And so they look at the layers of this tell. And you'll see that a lot in Israel. That's something when we go on the trip in 24, something you just want to keep in mind, what a tell is, all right? Now, the next term is something that when I first heard him saying this, I thought, what are they talking about? Because I know what it means to me, but he wasn't using it that way. And it is the word cultic. Now, to us, when we think of something that's cultic, we think of cultish.
Right.
That this is some far out weird something, or even the occult, which is satanic. But the word cultic, actually, whether you may not realize this, but the word cultic is really the root for our word culture.
Okay.
And cultic, when we talk about a cultic site, when they talk about a cultic site, what they're talking about is some religious place, or if it's a cultic object, it is some religious object that's connected to worship or religious ceremony. And that doesn't matter if it's ancient Christian, ancient Jewish, or ancient pagan. It's all classified as a cultic site. And that's what threw me off, because they were talking about uncovering these Israelite sites and finding this cultic place. And I'm saying, what are they saying? That the Jews were worshiping false gods? And then somebody asked the question. They explained, no, the word cultic just simply means religious. And so, in fact, what I'm going to show you here, and this is one of the interesting things that's been uncovered. We're going to see more about that in a few minutes. Boy, I don't know that I'm going to get through this in 20 minutes. Lord Jesus, help me. But this picture, I wish that you could see this better. I probably should have made these full page pictures. But this picture at the bottom here, that is an altar. Now, it's actually an altar built over an altar. So what happened was the top altar is from about the time of David and Solomon, somewhere in that era. All right, so about the time of David and Solomon, the top altar. But this top altar was built over a round altar that dates to the time of Joshua. So what archaeologists said was, most likely, they wanted to preserve Joshua's altar. And they built this altar over it to commemorate that this was Joshua's altar.
My.
Now, the interesting thing about this, and this is where, if we have time, we're going to get to this. This is where Dr. Stripling made this amazing find in the dump pile. A man that had excavated this very site. This is on Mount Ebal. For those who are not familiar, the story of the Israelites coming into the land of Canaan, one of the things that God told them in the book of Deuteronomy and reminded them in the book of Joshua was, when you get in and you start to possess the land, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take half of the tribes of Israel and go to Mount Gerizim, and half the tribes and go to Mount Ebal. In between is the city of Shechem. Let the Levites take the Ark of the Covenant to Shechem, and you're going to be right in between these two mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. Now, he said the tribes that are on Mount Gerizim are to pronounce all the blessings that are associated with the law that I've given to Moses. And the tribes that are on Mount Ebal are to pronounce all the curses that I've put in the law of Moses. And then God said, and when you've finished pronouncing these curses, I want Joshua to build an altar on the Mount of Cursing.
My.
This altar dates to the time of Joshua and is on the Mount of Cursing, Mount Ebal.
Is it still intact?
It's still there. Now, we can't go see it, unfortunately. In fact, archaeologists said the only way you can get there, you've got to have armored buses. It's highly contested area, the Palestinians and Jews fighting. It's very dangerous to go. So it's not even a possibility. I would love to.
Sure.
But again, we're going to talk about in a little while what was found in the dump pile of this altar on the Mount of Cursings. But it makes sense, doesn't it, that the altar would be built on the Mount of Cursing and not the Mount of Blessing?
Sure.
Because you want an altar to keep you from the curses. And so this is where you build the altar. And obviously Joshua did just that. And then it was honored later on. But that would be considered by archaeologists a cultic site. All right, so very quickly now, let's go on. And you can get me out of the picture here as we watch these other little videos here. Let's talk about a few amazing finds. We're just going to go through a few of these. These are only a minute or so long each. But I think you're going to really enjoy seeing some of this information. Some really neat stuff here, all right? So let's get started. Now, this video, these clips that I'm about to play come from a video with these two guys that are talking, and one of them is doing a top 10 countdown of the greatest archaeological finds, biblical archaeological finds of all time, in his opinion. So you'll see him say number 9 on the list or number whatever on the list. So don't even worry about the list. I just chose some of these to show you. But in his opinion, these were the greatest of all time. All right? So I'm going to show you just a few of these. This is what archaeology is discovering.
This is so cool. We don't realize that the New Testament itself is an artifact. The New Testament itself is part of archaeology. And I'm going to say number 8 is P52, the John Rylands fragment. This fragment is so interesting because it was circulating the same time, Alan, that the original Gospel of John, I'm talking the one John wrote, was also circulating. We date, as Bible scholars, John's Gospel to the 90s AD. How do we date fragments? How do we date manuscripts? This is what I did in my doctoral work in Oxford. You date it by the science of paleography. You look at the handwriting styles, and what you're seeing right here is, it looks like it's a mirrored image. That's right. Christians, well, they didn't invent, but Christians made codices, codex, the book, writing on the front and back popular. It's probably the only time the church has ever been on trend, by the way, was using the codex, because Jews, they use scrolls. So you see writing on both the recto and the verso, and this is fascinating. This dates to AD 125. Think about that for a minute.
Recto and verso?
Recto and verso. This is a great question. So recto is just simply one side. It goes with the side that the papyrus lines go. So verso, vertical lines, and then recto, the lines would go that way so they could write more easily. You can even see that in this high resolution pic, how the writing is with the actual grain. It's very interesting. And what is this fragment? John 18. It's that conversation that Jesus is having with Pontius Pilate. I see it right here to the right, about 5.5 on the ruler, on the right side of the image. It says ektes aletheus in Greek. This is that time when Jesus said to Pilate, those who are ektes aletheus of the truth, hear my voice. This is a priceless fragment. Again, Papyrus 52, AD 125. Incredible discovery.
Wow.
Okay, so did you get that? The Gospel of John was written about 90 AD. This is a fragment from John's Gospel that dates to 120 AD. So the actual writing of John was still in circulation at the time that this one was written. We're only talking 30 years difference. And I think it's so beautiful, the phrase that is there, ektes aletheus, of the truth. This is what is so amazing with archaeology. If you're familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls, they find these scrolls that are hundreds of years before Christ. People say, oh, the Bible's changed over the years. The Bible's changed over the years. The fact of the matter is, you go back to these ancient manuscripts and you find out they haven't changed. There's no change. There may be a word that's spelled differently, but there is no change in the content whatsoever from the earliest manuscripts. This is the most reliable book out there. But I thought that was a pretty fascinating find, to find one that dated to the same time as John's Gospel, basically. And obviously it was a hit, because this is a second printing or something, second edition. Very neat. All right, let's move on. The next one is the ossuaries. Oh yeah, the ossuaries. Now he's going to tell you what an ossuary is. All right, take me out.
Central event in Christianity is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, so I'm going to go with the ossuaries. Now, what on earth does the word ossuary mean? I am talking about boxes that have bones in them, okay? I'm not a dancer, but the longest bone in our body, our femur, is about how long these bone boxes are. Now, check out this beautiful photo. Alan was there not too long ago. You're looking from the western side of the Mount of Olives to the eastern
We're going to
gate
see
through
that
the
when we
Valley
go.
Kidron. And what's interesting, Alan, do you see all those boxes all over the Mount of Olives?
Yes.
It's like, what are those? Well, did you
I
know?
remember seeing that. I remember that.
There are estimated, and this is the smallest estimate I can find, there's an estimated 150,000 bodies buried on the Mount of Olives, because even Jews are familiar with this prophecy that when Messiah returns, he'll step foot on the Mount of Olives. That's Zechariah. And then there's even a prophecy in Ezekiel that the Messiah at his coming will go through the eastern gate. We don't have time to get into prophecy, but that's why the eastern gate is walled up, from one of the Muslim caliphates that did that, thinking they could stop this Jewish Messiah. What's fascinating, like I said, I'm not a dancer, but you'll notice, Alan, in this picture that the ossuaries are even pointing towards the eastern gate, to where in the resurrection you don't even need to turn around. Like, you stand up and you walk straight in a straight line to following the resurrected Messiah. What's interesting as we look specifically study at these ossuaries, it helps us understand Jewish burial traditions. If the resurrection is the central point of a Christian worldview, and I indeed think it is, the death and resurrection of Jesus is the centerpiece of a Christian worldview, we need to be familiar with Jewish burial traditions. This is the James ossuary. This is controversial. I think it's the top 5 for sure. This is the very ossuary of James, the brother of the Lord. You can see that incised in some of that writing on the side of the bone box, which is an ossuary.
So it has his name?
Has his name right in the middle, James, the brother of Jesus.
Oh, wow.
And friends, why this is important is Jews practice what's called second burial. If I died today, and if Alan was my brother, he would come to my tomb a year later on the anniversary of my death. He would collect my bones, and he would then remove them from the tomb and put them in this bone box for the rest of eternity. That's what happens here with James. Now, you can tell with this next one, I've got to move fast, but check out, remember that name Caiaphas, Alan, the high priest of Israel? Friends, the one who condemned Jesus. Jesus was persecuted in Caiaphas' home. We could see it off in that previous photo. This is Caiaphas' ossuary. How do we know it's Caiaphas' ossuary? It says it. Plus, it's ornate. It's a wealthy, very nice
Looks
looking.
a little different than James.
This is like the Lexus, okay? This is really nice. And by
So I hope you got that. These 2 bone boxes that they found, one, it's written on, and here's the thing, is it's not normal practice to write a name on an ossuary. Now, sometimes for the more wealthy, they will. The poorer ones, they won't. Obviously, they wanted people to know. Because, I mean, people can claim that, well, there were a lot of people with the name James and a lot of people with the name Jesus, Yeshua, which that is true during that time period, and probably some others that a Yeshua that had a brother named James. But normally, they don't write their names on the box. Somebody wanted to make sure that they knew who this one was.
Right.
And so this one is marked James, the brother of Jesus.
That's so cool.
And then the other one, the really ornate one, is marked right on it that it is Caiaphas, who was the high priest that condemned Jesus to death. And they found his, which is amazing because the skeptics have said, well, these people are all fictional. None of this stuff happened.
Right.
Oh, yes, it did. Yes, it did. We got to hurry. I got 8 minutes. This next one, I think, is the one that I've been trying to build up to for a while. Let's see what it says here. Yeah, this is it. This is what was found in the dump pile at Joshua's altar.
This one is very recent, Alan. This is the Curse Tablet. Have you heard of this? There are many. My friend Dr. Scott Stripling, who is the archaeologist who discovered the Curse Tablet, he's licensed with the IAA, that's the Israel Antiquities Authority. And you can look at it right here on the screen. It's about the size, it's 2 centimeters, it's about the size of 2 postage stamps for those that still use snail mail. And this is a Curse Tablet made of lead. And why is this important? Well, it was actually discovered during the sifting process just in 2019, but because of COVID, they couldn't publish, they couldn't get back to Israel. So it was just recently announced, could be the most important discovery of all time. Why? The implications are huge. This is the earliest written name for the personal name of God, not El, Yahweh. And this is that scene in the book of Joshua where there's the Mount of Blessing and the Mount of Cursing, Mount Ebal, Mount Gerizim, where the people of Israel would pronounce blessings if they obeyed God, curses if they didn't. So that's the biblical context. And they would actually, at the altar, they would write down these curses if they were disobedient to the law of God, and they pushed them together, threw them down on the altar. And Dr. Stripling and his incredible team found this. Now, I know I don't have much time. I'm going fast. Cursed, cursed, cursed. Cursed by the God Yahweh. You will die cursed. Cursed, you will surely die. Cursed by Yahweh. Curse, curse, curse. It's a chiastic parallel.
That's what's
and
written
it's
inside the
fascinating.
tablet.
It's 40 proto Hebraic,
Not pulling any punches with that
proto-alphabetic
curse.
letters. It's fascinating. You can actually see
Those are the
divine
ancient
name
Hebrew
Yahweh
letters.
right here that they found, and it's just so
my.
cool. I wish we had more time to talk about it. Just the way that they could actually discover and then decipher the text. It's fabulous. And it could be the most important one of all time. Check out the curse tablet because it is really interesting. Oldest divine name of Yahweh. It shows that Moses could have written the Pentateuch. Alan, the previous oldest divine name comes from 1000 BC. This is 200 or 300 years earlier than that.
Wow.
So 1400 years BC. And here's another thing is they claim that the Israelites didn't even know how to write and all of that during that time period. Wow. And here's absolute proof. No question this is Israelite because nobody else worships Yahweh.
Right.
The Jews are the only ones that worship Yahweh.
Right.
And it's very clear this is ancient Hebrew lettering. It is Yod, Hey, Vav, which it's kind of a complicated thing. We think YHWH when we see it,
Right.
what they call the Tetragrammaton. The fact is, it wasn't a Tetragrammaton to begin with. The final H is what they called a Mater Lectionis. It was added during the time of David and Solomon, that they added these certain breathing marks and different things at the end of words to help you know how to pronounce it. But in the original, back before the time of David, it was just strictly Yod, Hey, Vav, just the three.
Okay.
And that was Yahweh. And so to find this actually inscribed and to find it filled with curses on the mountain of cursing at the altar from the time of Joshua. This is a phenomenal find, and the man that's heading our archaeological dig is the man who found this, and he found it through the wet sifting process.
Impressive.
Very, very amazing. All right, I got 4 minutes. Where are we at? Let's get it back up here and see what's coming up next. Oh man, we don't have time to go through this. Now we're just now getting to where we're going, and it's getting late. And I hate for you not to know and not find out more about Shiloh. We'll go as far as we can go.
Tabernacle, which would essentially be the portable house of God, the dwelling of God, that would then lead them through the wilderness for those 40 years and on into the Promised Land. Joshua 18:1 is our first clear mention of Shiloh in the biblical text, and it says that Joshua had the tabernacle erected at Shiloh, which is in the tribal territory of Ephraim, and Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim, but it was also centrally located, and it was also there that he allotted the 7 tribes that had not yet received their tribal lands. He allotted them to them there.
Okay, so we're trying to move right along. Just giving you some background here really quickly. These are fairly brief, I think.
Does the name Shiloh have a meaning?
Shiloh is very similar to Shalom. So Shalom would mean peace. Shiloh would mean tranquility.
Okay.
So a place of tranquility, and which is interesting because the sacrificial system was so violent, so bloody. I mean, that operated at Shiloh for over 3 centuries. And it's just such a contrast between the name and the reality of what it takes to cover our sins.
Well, if you think about it, though, let's just think about that for a moment. If you've been carrying your sin around for a year, and you show up.
We're not going to have time to go through all this. Let me just real quickly try to. I won't have time to go through the significance of Shiloh. Let me just do it as fast as I can because I want you to be able to see a few things that they found. Shiloh is where we're headed, if you haven't figured that out. That's where we're going to be digging, is at the site of ancient Shiloh. Shiloh is important because it was the first capital of the Jewish people when they went into the land of promise. At the time Joshua went across, the city of Jerusalem was still controlled by the Jebusites. It was a pagan city. It was not their capital city. And so their capital was Shiloh. And it was the capital because Joshua chose to put the tabernacle there. So it was the seat of their religious worship. So anytime before the time of David and Solomon, anytime that you read about people going to the house of God, they were not going to Jerusalem. they were going to Shiloh. Because Joshua erected the tabernacle, had them erect the tabernacle at Shiloh. Now, one of the interesting things that Dr. Stripling brings out is that when you start reading 1 Samuel, the first chapter, you'll read about the curtains of the tabernacle. And we know that the tabernacle was a tent. But as you get into it, chapters 2 and 3, then you start reading about the doors of the tabernacle and the walls of the tabernacle. And so it appears, one could infer from that they must have erected a permanent building and not just a tent anymore. For it to have walls and doors, a tent doesn't have walls and doors. And so it seems that they had erected a permanent building there. And why this site is so important is because they have found the foundation that matches the exact size of the tabernacle.
My.
And it's divided exactly as the tabernacle would have been by dimension. You've got the holy place, which is twice as long as the most holy. And that's exactly the way it is. The other thing is it was facing east, which was what they always required. They always, whatever they did, it would be facing east. Very important. The sunrise, the new day, a new beginning. Eventually, everything would point towards Jerusalem. But to them, this was before Jerusalem was of importance. And so the tabernacle had to be east-facing, and this building was east-facing. So it's in every way, it matches the biblical record. Now, I'm hoping I can pull up real quick because we're down to almost no time, and it's already getting late. I don't have time to go through this. I wish I did.
How long?
The tabernacle was there for over 300 years. Over 300 years it was there. So if this really is the side of the tabernacle, you could expect to find some, can we say, cultic items.
Sure.
Right? You can just expect to find, if it was there for over 300 years, you're going to find some things. And again, I'm out of time. I'm over time, in fact. So let me just very quickly, I wish that I could find it and just show you the pictures. Didn't realize we're going to be this far out of time. But one of the things they've found is they have found an entire repository of animal bones. We're talking kosher animal bones. We're talking animal bones that were used in sacrifice. 1-year-old cattle, year-old sheep. Another amazing thing is that they're finding 2-to-1 the right side. Now, why is that significant? Because the Bible said that the right side belonged to the priest. So the left side was generally just consumed. So they're finding these bone repositories that are mostly right side. They're kosher animals. They've found storage rooms. This is the only facility in all of Israel. In every site they've dug up, it's the only facility they've found that's this way, that all around the perimeter of this building is nothing but storage rooms. Now, why is that significant? What happened at the tabernacle? People paid tithes back then. People brought offerings back then.
Right.
But it wasn't money. They didn't go to tabernacle.org and put in their credit card. Right? They didn't write a check. They didn't bring cash. What did they bring?
Animals,
grain. So you understand why there would be a need for many storage rooms. When you've got millions of people coming to this one location for their tithe, to bring their tithe.
300 years, too. That's a long time.
It's a long time.
That's longer than the U.S. has been in existence.
Absolutely. And so there is just storage rooms. And like I said, there is no other place in Israel that they found. Now, they haven't dug the Temple Mount. They're not allowed to. That's another story for another day. But there is no other site that has been dug up that's got these storage rooms all the way around.
That's so cool.
So, and again, I don't have time, but something else that they've found. Does anybody know anything about the priest's garment? Anybody know anything about the priest's garment, the priest that served at the tabernacle? My wife's got her hand up. Nobody else does? Does anybody know what went around the bottom of the priest's garment? What? Somebody said what? There's a bell. There's two things. A bell and a pomegranate. A bell and a pomegranate. Go back and read it. God said, put it around the bottom of your garment. A bell and a pomegranate. A bell and a pomegranate. Now, obviously they wouldn't use the literal fruit. That's going to spoil. So they're going to have to make some kind of pomegranate, ceramic or something, to hang. Okay? Now, why pomegranate? Well, that's another story for another day. But one of the things that I've heard is somebody said that a pomegranate is filled with seeds.
Right.
And they said that the average pomegranate has, get this, 613 seeds. Now, why 613? Why would that number stand out?
Law?
That's the number of commandments in the law of Moses. 613.
Wow.
So you think there might be a significance?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Seems like to me the bell is praise and the pomegranate is
The law.
the law,
My.
spirit and truth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, guess what they're finding at Shiloh? Ceramic pomegranates
My.
with hooks on the end.
Wow.
So Pastor, how long has the dig at Shiloh been going?
It just started in 2017 or 2018.
Okay.
They dug for a couple of years and had to shut down because of COVID. And I think last year was the first year they went back. I think 2022 was the first year they went
And
back.
is
So
it
they
the
were shut
same-
down for about 2 or 3 years.
Is it the same deal where it's like 5 or 6 week stints
Yes.
of digging
Yeah.
and then?
Now, they're not the first ones to dig Shiloh.
Okay.
Israel Finkelstein, it's a name means nothing to most people, but he is a very, very well-known archaeologist, but he does not believe the Bible. And he was the first one to start digging at Shiloh. He found all these bones, and he said it was, this is obviously the site of Canaanite worship.
Oh, wow.
Even though they're all kosher bones, and you got 2 to 1 right side, none of that, because he doesn't read the Bible.
Right.
And he just does not believe that the Israelites were there. So, that's Canaanites. But anyhow, Scott Stripling is not the first one to dig this site. But Finkelstein had started it, and then it was not dug for a number of years. And the Israeli Antiquities Authority contacted Scott Stripling and asked him if he would like to go back and start working on that again. And of course, he jumped at the chance. They had just finished, by the way, or they were in the process of finishing when he was contacted, Khirbet el-Makadr, which from all indications must have been the biblical city of Ai. They pronounce it I, but there's a lot that they found there that's unbelievable as well. The second city, you remember, that Joshua overthrew when they came in. So he was just finishing up at Khirbet el-Makadr, and they contacted him, want to know would he be interested in overseeing a work at Shiloh. And so he did. He jumped at the chance, and he's been over there, like I said, 3 or 4 years, and they had to take 2 or 3 years off because of COVID. They started back up. If I'm not mistaken, last summer they started back up. So this will just be the second season after COVID for doing this. And so they're finding pomegranates, they're finding bones, they're finding huge vats, they're finding... They found the gate to the city. Now, does anybody know what happened in the gate of Shiloh? Can anybody remember the biblical story? Something important happened in the gate of Shiloh.
No idea.
Okay, let's think back to Samuel. Think back to the days of Samuel. Who's the priest in Samuel's life? Who's Samuel being raised by?
Eli.
Eli. Eli's sons are bad. Samuel's first word from
Yes.
God is, I'm bringing judgment.
Yep.
So later on, Saul comes, takes the ark out to battle against the Philistines. What happens? Come on, guys. What happens? The Philistines capture the ark.
Right.
Take it through.
They come back with word. Phinehas' wife is about to have a baby, and she gives birth to Ichabod. Names him Ichabod, which means the glory is departed, because the ark is now gone. When word got to Eli, the high priest, that the ark was gone, what happened?
He died.
He died.
Fell
Do you know where he died?
Obviously
In the gate of Shiloh. He was in the gate of Shiloh, according to the scripture, when he got the news and fell over, broke his neck, and died. They've just uncovered the gate of Shiloh.
Wow.
So great biblical significance there.
Wow.
So I've had to cut through a whole bunch of stuff here that you didn't get to see, but all of this is out there. You can find it. Biblical, what is it? It's not Biblical Archaeology Review. They're not even biblical anymore.
What, the website? Or?
Associates for Biblical Research, ABR. Associates for Biblical Research. That's the group we're going with. You can go to their website. They've actually got a podcast. They've got things there, but you can find all this. You want to look up more about the curse tablet. You want to look up more about Shiloh. Very interesting stuff. You can look up about Jericho, the city of Jericho. They've been very, very involved in their whole focus really is the time of the conquest of Joshua. And so the cities where they dig, the things that they do are all involved in that. And a lot of good information there. All right? So I've gone almost 11 minutes over. Are there any questions? Anything that I know it's late. Anybody got any questions that you'd like for me to answer before we bring this to a conclusion?
Jasmine?
Yes. We have had to already sign a non-publish agreement. And there are reasons for that. Because again, they've got to protect their credibility. And if you find some little something and some volunteer starts putting this out on Facebook saying, "Oh, look, I found the zipper to Eli's garment," or whatever, then the whole work loses its credibility. And so they are very careful about it. So there's probably some things that they'll let us take pictures of, but most likely a lot of it they won't. They did tell us that at the end there will be things. One of the things, I don't know if you heard him say, but they dig up about 2,000 pieces of pottery a day. A lot of that is just pottery. It has no real significance. Sometimes they call this an ostrakon. If they take a piece of pottery, sometimes once a vessel broke, then they would use that to write on. They would inscribe something on it, and it would become like a letter. They would use that pottery, that broken pottery, and then it's called an ostrakon. And so they always check every piece of pottery to make sure there's not some inscription or writing on it. But if it's just a piece of pottery and there's no writing and there's no significance, probably some of that they're going to let us bring home. They told us that there were some things they would let us bring home, but they're going to go through everything thoroughly before anything gets released to us. Probably going to be very limited in what we can take pictures of. But
I did sign up to take my drone because they were asking for professionals, and I explained that I'm not a professional, but I can fly a drone.
Self-proclaimed.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. He mentioned they're high tech. They've got laptops out there. They've got infrared. They've got all kinds of stuff they're doing. So they're really, really high tech in what they're doing. And yet so much of it is still just grunt work. I mean, you just have to get in there with your hand and a small trowel, get on your knees and get down in the hole and dig it out.
I can't wait.
Good question, though. Good question. Anybody else? All right. Sounds like we're all done. You guys, any comments? If not, Our next Face the Truth Live, I don't know when it is. It's the last Saturday of May, something like that.
Sunday of May.
Last Sunday, of May. And it will be about the dig at Shiloh, what we experienced while we're there. We will have just gotten home.
You're going to say the day before.
Yeah, we just arrive on the Saturday before, and then we've got the Face the Truth that night. And we'll hopefully be able to share some things with you. I'm excited about going. I've been interested in archaeology for many, many years, and I'm glad I'm finally getting to go.
Yes, sir.
Wish that I had the time to be able to go for longer. They're going to be there for basically a month, and I'm just getting 1 week of that. I really wish I could be there for the whole thing. Maybe someday. There's also a sifting project that's going on at the Temple Mount that I would love to be a part of, but I think you have to commit to like 30 days to be a part of that. But what's going on there is the Muslims, without authority, went in and started digging that site with backhoes on the Temple Mount. And they were just throwing all the dirt into the Kidron Valley. They weren't sifting anything. Of course, their claim is the Jews weren't even there. They were there before the Jews. The temple didn't exist there. That's their claim. And so they just go in and they've got backhoes and they're just digging and they're throwing it all in the ditch. And finally, they were able to get them stopped, and they've set up a sifting project to go through those piles of dirt. Now, none of that's in situ.
Sure.
But they have found some amazing things, They found the seal of King Hezekiah. That's pretty impressive. They found the seal of the prophet Isaiah in these mounds of dirt that were just thrown in the Kidron Valley.
Wow. Unreal.
It's amazing. If a trained archaeologist were allowed to go in there, there's no telling
Sure.
what would be uncovered on that Temple Mount.
My.
No telling. But maybe one day I'll be able to go and spend a month over there
Right.
and get involved in that and see some of the items. I would love to have been the one to pick up that seal of the prophet Isaiah. See if there's still any anointing on that thing.
He would have had to have touched that, right?
Had to.
They would have
absolutely.
a
Oh
letter
yeah,
or
absolutely.
something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he was friends with the kings. Obviously, Hezekiah is the one that he came in and prophesied to him that you're going to die, and then came back and said, "What do you want God to do? Move the sundial ahead or move it back?"
Right.
So all that conversation goes on between Hezekiah and Isaiah.
My.
So, yeah, interesting stuff.
Excellent. You have anything?
No.
All right. Well, we'll close it out. Thank you, Bishop. And thank you to everyone who has joined us for today's Face the Truth live event. We want you to know that we are here to help you in any way we can. If there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate to contact us. Send your prayer requests to prayer@olathetruth.com. That's prayer@olathetruth.com. If you live in the Kansas City metropolitan area and do not have a home church, we invite you to join us for our services this week, Sunday morning at 10 a.m., Sunday evening at 6 p.m., and Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. For those who cannot attend, we will provide a live stream on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and our website, olathetruth.com/live. Until our next Face the Truth live event, take care and God bless.